Hello, I am Coach Cooper and we're going to be looking at Terraria. This game has been out since 2011 and I have covered it before, but briefly in a 5 more video. It's just got better and better. It hasn't gone away, this game. It's so popular, huge subculture, one of the biggest fan pages and wikis I've ever seen. It's just deep and awesome and really worth another look. I think I'm going to put it under the microscope again because we've had some recent patches. They've just been kind of hot fixes, but we saw a beautiful crossover one with the Don't Starve team. A lot of the assets, characters have been switched out and you get this really cool crossover. It's totally worth the look. But this video is just going to be a sort of bedrock look at the split screen modes and some of the changes that they've injected over the years. Just very quickly before we start, I get a lot of requests on the channel from people saying, look, I want something to play with the missus or the partner, something that's laid back and deep, but it's not like reaction based and full of gore and crazy guns and zombie heads getting cut off. There's a bit of that in here, but it's on an 8-bit level. But my point is, this is really accessible and very deep and complex. It's kind of like a good book. The more chapters you get in, the deeper and richer it becomes. It's a very good curve, introduces you to its extremely deep crafting system and its exploration elements. Back to my original point, this is the one. This is up there with Don't Starve, Nom Nom Galaxy. Really great, passive, awesome crafting and exploration creative gameplay here. Let's look at what we've got on a surface level. You start on what looks like a flat crust or plane, but you do have hints that there are things underneath that surface. And of course, there are a couple of new modes flung in. One of them is called Journey. There's Classic and Journey, and then there's like a, real life Bear Grylls mode. I haven't looked at that yet. But the Journey mode is really the way forward with this game model because it gives you enough starter items, meaning a melee weapon and a little bit of sort of crafting material. You've got a good bit to go with. And it's kind of mapped out objectives. There are boss fights in this and they're huge and they're amazing. We're going to get to the control scheme and the fighting in a second, but I just want to touch on that exploration level. It's so epic. Just on a procedural generation of what you're going to find on that map that you've spawned in, and of course there's loot down there and a lot of the caves are natural, but you can also just dig your own. Sometimes there's a question mark that you might see and you just straight dig a beeline towards it. It's really incredible on a sort of spelunky front. And now let's get over to the controls because those were kind of ahead of its time, I think. You've got your jump on a trigger, left trigger, and you've got your attack on right trigger. Games like Neon Abyss and some indie roguelikes have adopted this method because it means that your thumb is kind of free to use those face buttons. And that's really handy as well for a crafting game like this. But it also means that jumping around in combat is actually pretty cool, especially ranged. And of course, when you stick a little sword out on the close quarters, a lot of it's very satisfying. There's a number system. There are deep RPG elements with this. The crafting and building I wanted to cover very briefly because it is a gatherer, a little bit like Ark or any other tree basher. You do have to get your resources and you are essentially needing to build a home or a shelter because there is a day and night system and you have increased amounts of baddies coming at you when things get dark. Notice those blue blobs coming over. We're now sealed in, but there's things like doors and furniture and elements to actually make the house out of multi-tiered floors. You've only got to start googling the bases on this game to see how deep that can go. I do also want to talk about its NPC metagame. You'll notice that there's a third character on screen, and on the maps there are people that are there to help you. And the more houses you build and the more complete they are, the higher the chance of an NPC will come into one and you can start interacting with them and huge things come off the back of that. That's a very clever idea. It's a massive incentive to build a village that everyone's going to come and live in. You might also notice that we've got these little hats that are birds' nests and there's a little bird that comes out and pecks the enemies for us. Just like any other shooter or R-type, you can get these things to help you or be around you all the time. Think Risk of Rain. They get incredible and you end up being a formidable walking nightmare for a lot of the enemies and bosses. But at the start it's just so cool to see that on this journey mode they've given you a little look at how amazing your character can become. Let's touch on this crafting very quickly and the kind of overarching objective of playing the game, and it's really about getting rare elements, cool gems, metals and stuff that's difficult to find because they'll go towards making cool stuff to craft. It's the same old story. A lot of that material is found in dangerous caves or rewarded to you from killing a big enemy. So you had that incentive to start making metal armor, better swords. I got the bow and arrow going, and feeling that jump to range in early game is really liberating. And of course the other players like, I want to get one of them, and you're like, well, go and get your stuff to make one. You have this area around the anvil or the workbench which increases the amount of crafted items, and it's pound signs in the eyes of anybody who loves a decent crafter, especially a cute 16 8-bit one. Think Ark's Veil. When you get that little bit of armor put on, you make your wooden chest piece and you've got your bird hat on, you're like, yes, I'm ready to go spelunking. It has what I would call a 2-tier backwall system. So what I'm talking about is that you have 2 layers of screen that you're looking at here, and you can fill in a wall that's behind the construction. It's quite weird. You can't really access that back wall with anything else other than putting stuff on it, i.e. it's not like you've got 2 parallel universes, but it's really cool with construction because you can start putting up things like wallpaper and pictures and making your interiors very personalized. I like the idea. The same level of customization gets pumped into your character himself, with giving you options to dye your armor, and every element built piece of armor, be it metal, wood, stone, all the diamonds, everything shows on that tiny little 8-bit sprite, which I think is genius. They could have easily overlooked that and just had you looking the same the whole game. No, there's great visual improvement on everything you craft and make, even down to little glow sticks that you throw down with the amount of light they create, to where you put your torches. Incredible system. How hard is it? And I heard the word roguelike mentioned earlier, and procedural. Well, the good news is the death is just a respawn. It's pretty awesome, and you will have a respawn point on the map. Strongly suggest you build a structure around it. You have this thing called a mirror, which enables you to go straight to it immediately as well. So you could hook up with the person that died straight away, thus sort of helping manage the disappointment of being flung back out of your base. This is not a permadeath lose-all situation, and the journey mode promotes getting somewhere in the game without having to face too much adversity. And that's really why I've made the video. It may have been 4 or 5 years ago you fired this up and you looked at the classic mode, which starts you with barely anything, and you have to scrabble around just to get an axe together. And things are quite difficult if you're really not up for putting loads of time and sitting on Wikipedia. Now it's kind of almost like an accessible AA indie game that a lot of people can get into on a split screen level. You don't have to be a crazy crafter to love this game, and I'm going to go back to it and see how many hours I'm going to pump into it again. You hear people talking about thousands, 5,000 hours. I was looking at a YouTuber the other day, crazy amount of content. If you like this video or want to see more couch co-op and local split screen games, hop on over to the channel or subscribe. I put out regular videos on the subject, and I've got a huge list of backlogged games that you may have not seen yet. As always,